At the time we became independent in 1948, we were amongst the most promising countries in Asia. Our per capita GDP in terms of purchasing power parity was only 18% less than Japan, more than twice that of India, 50% more than Thailand, and equal to those of Taiwan and South Korea. And then we fell victim to a series of bunglers who didn't have a clue as to how to develop the country. And we're still wallowing in the mess that they created. One element of that mess is the idea that you can somehow grow rich and prosper without doing any actual work. And nothing reflects that myth better than the number of holidays that we give ourselves. This year, the government has declared 25 public holidays. If you divide these amongst the religions, 13 are for Buddhists. The Hindus, who represent 13% of the population, get us 3 more holidays, Mahasivaratri, Thai Pongal and Diwali. While the 10% who are Muslim give us 3 more, Maulid, Eid and Eid al-Fitr. Coming in last with just 7.5% of the population are the Christians, who give us Good Friday and Christmas. Let's dig into this a little deeper. What do I care? I don't have any friends left to lose. Why should 90% of the country stop work just because a small minority, somewhere between 7 and 13%, wish to observe a holy day? It simply makes no sense. Much more efficient would be to give every employee 3 additional days of leave every year, so they could take time off to observe their particular holy days, if any. This way, instead of the whole country grinding to a halt for these 8 days, those who wish to perform their religious duties are free to do so. What then about the Buddhists, who account for 13 holidays? Well, if you are as old as I am, you'll remember how Dudley Senanayake, in one of his more harebrained schemes, converted the whole of Sri Lanka to the lunar calendar in January 1966. The period between successive full moons was divided into 4 weeks, and the days of the week were labelled P1, P2, and so on. The 7-day Monday to Friday week that is followed by the rest of the world was ditched. That wasn't good enough for sunny Sri Lanka. But what this genius forgot to factor in was the fact that there are 29.5 days between successive full moons. There was no way of dividing that by 7. This meant that there was no way of telling how many days there were in a given week. We had 6-day weeks, and we even had 8-day weeks. It seemed that even the Beatles had released a song just for this occasion. Ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week. And you can imagine the consequences for international commerce. By 1968, our exports fell to below their 1958 levels. And this farce went on for 4 whole years, until finally Sirimava Bandaranaike put an end to it in 1970. It was perhaps the only sensible thing that she ever did. But then she decreed that every full moon day would be a holiday, and no subsequent government has had the cojones to change that. But change we must if we want this country to prosper. We must accept, of course, that Vesak and Poson, the holiest days in the Buddhist calendar, should be national holidays, as should the day following or preceding Vesak, especially if it results in a long weekend. The remaining full moon days of the year should not be public holidays, though of course everyone can take those days off for religious observances using their allocation of 3 religious holidays, or if they are especially religious, their 14 days of paid leave. If we do that, here's what our holiday calendar will look like. Remember, according to labour law, we are each required to work a half day also on Saturdays, although few employers actually enforce this. This means we already get 26 days off work every year. Add to that the 25 public holidays, the 2 weeks of vacation leave, and the 7 days of casual leave we have. And we each get around 70 days off every year, which means 70 days of productivity lost to the economy. Are you still surprised that we're in the bottom third of the poorest countries on the planet? So, do rich countries have fewer holidays than poor ones? Well, look at it this way. Only 4 countries in the world have more public holidays than Sri Lanka. Myanmar, Nepal, India, and Iran. Are those the ones we're trying to emulate? The technically minded people amongst you might wonder whether the number of public holidays correlates negatively with per capita GDP. The short answer is yes, it does, kind of, but it's complicated. For one thing, some rich countries can afford to have as many public holidays as they like because they pluck their money off trees. Saudi Arabia, for instance. For another, having no holidays at all would be crazy. Productivity would plummet. The world average for public holidays is about 14 days a year. But the rich countries that I've marked here with a blue ellipse have an average of 11 days. Everyone wants us to be like Singapore. Well, in that case, settle for 11 public holidays. In short, I propose that we reduce the number of holidays from 25 to 11, which means we work 2 weeks more in the year. There's evidence to suggest that that could boost our annual GDP growth from about 5.5% to as much as 8%. What's not to like about that? Or do we just want to go on being the idle lotus eaters that we are? The choice is yours.